Hey everybody, welcome to Cousin Jack Carves. So today I'm going to share with you a Halloween carving project, and it's sort of a project that you could use throughout the year. It doesn't have to necessarily be for Halloween. This one just happens to have a theme for Halloween. So I have right here a carving, and you can see here I've got the Goblin King, the Wrinkled Witch, the Gargoyle, and the Pilgrim Zombie. All right, so there's a Halloween theme, and you can see I've got one carving on each corner. So what are we gonna do? We're gonna tear it apart. You know, you may have seen this carving that I did in a similar fashion with a hillbilly and a cowboy, a wood spirit, and a gnome. And we made it so we could have permutations. That's right, we're gonna make mutants for Halloween. It's gonna be fun. Anyway, after you take it apart and then reconstruct it, there are 64 permutations. Now, I can tell you this started with Joe Yu. As far as I know, Joe was the first person I saw anyway who took a piece of wood and made what he called split personalities. Now, this one has a dowel running through the center of it, and it was all drilled out and glued back together, but I think I have a method that might be easier, and I want to share that with you. So let's get started. So the next step, I kind of mentioned to you, I was going to take this and cut it apart, right? You can see I've done that. What you might not see is that this is cut too. And here's what I'm talking about. An easier way to make one of these interchangeable sort of toys is to use magnets instead of drilling it out like I had to with this one, drilling it out and then putting a dowel down the center. There are advantages, I think, to go with magnets. For example, this one, the gaps here are larger. And part of that is that if you're going to drill, you have to really be dead center with your dowel. You can't be off of perpendicular 90 degrees with your dowel. It makes it a real challenge. And it's basically got more moving parts, right? There are 5 pieces here because you have to have an end cap on each end that are going to be glued to the dowel that don't move so that the other pieces can freely move. With the magnets, the end cap is part of that top piece. You don't have to have 5 pieces, you can have 3. So it's simpler. I think it's more forgiving. You don't need a drill, you don't need a dowel, you just take some magnets and off you go. So let's talk about what I used here. So I've got these magnets, they're called magnetic discs. These come from a company called Basic Gray. You can see we have negative and positive, there are little stickers on there. Now, they do have a sticky side once you peel off the paper. However, I do recommend using epoxy when you put in these magnets, and that will help them stay much better, really what you need, okay? 2-part epoxy. All right, so it's going to be important to find the center of an irregular shape, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. There's a simple method that we're going to use that should be pretty effective for you. So first of all, if you're going to do one of these carvings, and you can see I used foam, but Joe Yu, of course, used wood when he started, and you can certainly make these out of wood. I've seen other examples where they were carved from wood. It's going to be important, though, that you use a square block. That's very helpful for a number of reasons. First of all, when you're finding center, it's pretty easy to find the center of a square. Secondly, it's also helpful when you're going to set up your carving. So, for example, you can see there are 4 figures, one carved on each corner, and you have to the center line on each side before you start to intrude on the next one that you'll be carving. So let's talk about that for a second and how to go ahead and set this up. What I would say to you is figure out what you're using. I used 2x2 square, and if you do that, that means you're going to have 1.5 inches of space widthwise for each of your figures. Okay? It's basically the measurement from the corner to the halfway mark on each side, and what that comes out to for the 2x2 block is 1.5 inches. And you can see here I drew these figures before I carved them. Somewhat of an approximation of what they look like, and it's helpful for you to know how much space you have before you get started with your carving. When you go to cut, and before you cut, of course, you want to know what you're doing and how to set up your carving. You can see I have a line here and a line here. What that is, when you go to cut, you're going to cut above the eyebrows and below the nose, right? That's how you get that middle piece, this piece right here, above the eyebrows and below the nose. That's how that's cut. So then what you have for the top, you've got the hat or horns or whatever they have. And then on the bottom, you've got the mouth and the chin. Okay, that's how you set it up. So you want to know how much space you have to work with, and you want to have lines drawn on your carving so you know where that bottom of the nose will be and where the top of the eyebrows are going to sit. It's important when you go to carve, because if you're going to cut it, you don't want to have an issue later. You want to be aware of where those lines are while you're carving each of the 4 corners. Okay? Now let's find that center. The easiest way is to take your block, and you've got points on the base. All I do is line up, so I look here, close one eye, and then look for that corner of the base down here to peek up above the horizon, and that is going to be my spot on that corner. So I go on to each corner, do the same thing. Yep, that one is here. It's like you're sighting down the sight of a rifle, so you've got one eye closed. You look for that corner, and there you are. Next, of course, we're just going to use our ruler and draw an X, because that will tell us where the center is when we're using a square piece like we did with this project. All right, so here's our center right here. Pretty easy, right? And you can use the same thing with this end, right? You've got the corners as a reference. What about the middle piece? Well, this middle piece, I should say this middle piece, doesn't have a base with a square on it. So how do you find that center? Well, the nose on each side is going to be equivalent to the corner. So just use the nose to orient where that corner would be, and then again draw an X. You can see I've already carved this out and it's ready to accept a magnet with some epoxy. And how do we get there? Well, first thing I did was to measure these magnetic discs. Turns out they are 16 millimeters in diameter. So whatever the diameter of your magnet, you want to go half of that. Okay? I've got a pair of dividers here that used to belong to my dad. And half of the 16 is going to be 8 millimeters. And that's what I want. I want half because I'm going to draw a circle. I'm going to scribe a circle with my dividers. So I put one point right there dead center, and then go about scribing my circle. This will be the same size as my magnet. There we go. And I can take my pencil if I want to and just kind of pencil that in. You can see here I've put a negative sign. This is going to be a negative magnet. You want to make sure before you put your epoxy on these magnets that you have your negatives and positives figured out. You don't want your pieces to reject one another. All right, so what I like to do is just use a gouge with the shallow sweep to carve out this circle. Now these magnets are pretty thin, don't really have to get a whole lot of depth to make a space for them. So I'm just going to take this gouge, just kind of outline my shape here. Like so. Just kind of cutting in what would be a stop cut, let's say, okay? Then I'll take my antique Sorby gouge here, again with the shallow sweep. Just kind of follow around, take out a little chunk. Now this foam carves a lot like basswood, and you can certainly use basswood to make your project and make yourself some mutants for Halloween, right? Well, look at that. Boom. So we've got ourselves a little bit of a space going here. I'll come back again with my smaller gouge just to reinforce that stop cut a little bit. And I'll start to even out the depth for my magnet. Now the final part of this, after I've got the hole sort of gouged out, is just to take some 2-part epoxy, mix that up, and place the magnet in place. And the rest is history. It's very simple compared to drilling out a hole and trying to get that drill perpendicular. Now, if you have a drill press, that can be a lot simpler. I don't have a drill press. I just think that this method is easier for everyone concerned. A simpler way to make the split personalities carving that was, as far as I know, created by Joe Yu. So there you go. You don't need much depth, really. That's about it. You put your magnet in there. I'm just going to bevel this edge. As long as your magnet is recessed a little bit, you'll be good. Once I have the magnets in place, I will go ahead and paint this part of the foam black. That way it won't really show much at all. And then I'll put a coat of polyacrylic over the black paint, and then this will be all done. So here's our finished product. All done now. I went ahead and painted inside here to cover up the green color of the foam. And as you can see, it's finished. So what you want to do, and make sure you have magnets that are strong enough so you can pick it up and it doesn't fall apart, okay? You should be able to do magic like this, like that. And then you have mutants for Halloween. Let's have a few faces. So this is, again, the Goblin King, the zombie with the pilgrim hat, the gargoyle, and the wrinkled witch. And we can switch things up really easily here. So there's the zombie face with the Goblin King chin, teeth, and crown. We can go ahead and change that. Let's give it the witch's hat. And then we can bring in the zombie's teeth. Why not bring in the gargoyle? Let's do that. So here's the gargoyle's face. And we can also give the gargoyle's teeth to this guy over here. So as you can see, there are many, many mutations that you can make and have fun with. It's more or less a toy. There are 64 permutations altogether that you can have fun with. And I encourage you to do that. You can use wood, by the way. Like I said, Cho Yu, who created the first split personalities, did that with wood. If you decide you want to go with foam, I will put a link in the description below this video. You can find sculpting foam on Amazon if you really want to go with foam. The place where I bought this is no longer in business, so I can't direct you to that site. I will tell you that the magnets, when I glued those in, I tried CA glue. With foam, it doesn't really hold. It may work fine with wood, so I use this two-part epoxy to put the magnets in. And that's where I would go if I was about to do some gluing with foam. Like I said, with wood, the CA glue may hold just fine. Well, folks, I want to thank you for coming along. Enjoy your Halloween and have fun making one of these projects. We'll see you next time.